3 John verses 1 and 2. The elder, to the beloved Gaius, whom I love in truth. Beloved, I pray that you may prosper in all things and be in health, just as your soul prospers.
It's good to see everyone here this morning, and especially I want to echo our just a sentiment about our visitors this morning. If you get a chance, Augie brought his parents, and they came with him this morning, and it was great to meet them, and certainly encouraged by them. And then also Sam is here with him, and Sam and Augie are dating. I'm going to totally embarrass you now, but when she got in here, Augie introduced her to his parents, and I'm thinking, this is like the meeting of the parents right here. So, but it's so great to meet this family, and Augie, we could not be happier or more excited about the decision that you made, and with that, and I know that you're going to be a great example and influence to a lot of other people as well with it. And then we also have a visitor that came with the bouts, Jude, and grateful that we're excited that he is able to be here with us as well. And it's always great to have visitors. I mentioned John in Bible class, and glad that he's able to be here. We're going to be looking at John, a different John, this morning as we get started. When you look at the Apostle John, this is an individual. Of course, he was an apostle, but he wrote 5 different books in the New Testament. And they have so much to do with the heart. And of course, that sort of stands to reason because John is known as the apostle whom Jesus loved. But John really was an emotional writer. He really got personal in his writings, where some of the other writers that we see in the inspired works they don't get as personal as he does in a lot of it. And that's not to say that they don't have their value. They're inspired by God, and we need to hold them with the utmost respect and listen to them and understand what they are. But John was, when the Holy Spirit inspired these men to write, it was so peculiar because they would know what to write about, but they would be able to use their own style in writing these things. And John was no different. And when you look at John's writings, so much of it had to do with the heart. For example, when you look at the gospel account that he wrote, and of course this is one of 4 biographies of the life of Christ. He wrote about the heart of Christ and who Christ was. He really delved deep into the compassion and the emotion that Jesus felt for people, and the kind of heart that we ought to have. You look at John 14:15. He told people, he quotes the words of Christ: "If you love me, keep my commandments." That love that we have for Jesus is not sufficient if it's not followed by the obedience that we have, if we don't do what he has commanded. And of course, he has our best interests in mind. And so John wrote a great deal about this in his biography about the Christ. He wrote the Revelation. It was John whom the Revelation was given. And when you look at the Revelation, he starts it off with the hearts of 7 different congregations. And people have done a lot of studies of these different places and the different people, and we see the strengths and the weaknesses of them. We see the hearts of what these congregations are all about, these 7 churches, and what a heart produces. We also see what a heart, what is not produced when the heart's not where it should be. And so we see this, and everything that follows in Revelation remember, it's to them, and it made a great impact upon who they were and why things were happening at that time. And then he writes 3 letters that we have in the literary New Testament that we have that were written. I mean, they weren't written back to back to back as far as chronologically with everything else, but they were 3 letters that were written by John. We have First John, and this is where he encouraged the Christians to maintain these stable hearts. And of course, he starts out in this talking about the relationship that the apostles had with Christ and why they knew who he was, who he claimed to be, how they knew that he was what he was, and everything that they went through, and how important it was to have that grounded heart. And of course, the Gnostics were very present at that time, and so it was vital to maintain something like that. Then we have his second letter, in which he writes to this is a private letter to a woman with a godly heart. And so we see, everything. He doesn't just commend her, but he commends her children. Then we come to the third letter. And that's the one that I want to really focus on this morning as we go through it. In which John, and it's a short letter. It's one, it's for us, it's, that keep track of the chapters and verses, with what the translators gave us. It's only one chapter long, and it's not even that long of a chapter. But within this single letter, there are the hearts that he writes about of three different individuals. And these three individuals, when you look at them, really capture the essence of so many different congregations, the good that people have, the not so good that people have, and things that people need to be careful of in different places. And so we really get an understanding of this one congregation that John is writing about, these individuals that he mentions in this. John was a heart specialist. He cared greatly about it. When you look at the third John, this third letter, it was likely written in Ephesus about AD 91. It's right around the time of his other epistles that he wrote as well. But he writes this third letter to express some sentiments about these certain attitudes of these people. And when you look at this, it's not hard to start looking inward. Our attitudes are defined by where we are spiritually. And where we are spiritually is defined by our hearts. But it is up to every congregation and every person to decide how faithful that they want to be. It is going to be up to you to decide how faithful you are. I can't decide that for you. You need to make it your faith. This has to be your decision in order to be a Christian, to live the Christian lifestyle, to decide to be a Christian first and foremost, and to find out what has to be done and find out what the scriptures have to say about it. But please do, whatever you do not do it because of someone else pressuring you. Don't do it because of someone else, because you might have seen someone else. Make it your faith. That's how you're going to grow. That's how disciples are made. That's how disciples grow in Christ. And the same thing that we can see with who John is writing to, here we see that very same attribute for him. John names three different people and the hearts that they had, and this is a good representation of the members today. We start this off in 3 John, verse 1. He says, the elder to the beloved Gaius. Until right off the bat, we see just what he thinks of him. He really commends him. He lifts him up. To the beloved Gaius, whom I love in truth. Beloved, I pray that you may prosper in all things and be in health, just as your soul prospers. John had a great admiration for Gaius. That much was clear. I can imagine when you look at Gaius and John, the way that John talks to him, we know that Gaius was a Christian. He did everything that had to be, that would make him a Christian. He was converted. That means that he would have done everything that everyone else would have done in order to be added by the Lord to his church. He repented. He believed. He confessed. He was baptized. All of these things that we see in the New Testament that would make one a Christian. I can't imagine how encouraging it must have been to receive a letter like this. Those who know me know I'm a big card writer. I love writing cards to different people. Can you imagine, though, getting a letter from an apostle? Just, what that would do. Just, the encouragement and how that would just build you up, and to, receive a letter like this from John, where he starts out with these sentiments, to the beloved Gaius, whom I love in truth. How humbling it must have been for him to receive a letter such as this. But John had a great admiration for him. Now, when we look at Gaius, this may or may not have been the one that Paul baptized. Gaius was a common name. In fact, if you look at, you don't have to go to all of these, but you can write them down if you'd like. You go to Acts 19, verse 29, there is a Gaius of Macedonia. Over in Acts 20, verse 4, there's a Gaius of Derbe. There's a Gaius of Corinth in 1 Corinthians 1:14 and Romans 16:23. And then there's the Gaius that is mentioned in this letter. But he acknowledges his spiritual prosperity. John brought this to light. And it must have meant so much to John to see someone like this in the faith. We get encouraged, we get edified to see other Christians at work, don't we? To see them active, not just to show up, not just to even show up, to different events, although we're certainly grateful, but to be active and to just see what kind of faith they have when they're not here. Folks, that's when you really see what a Christian is all about. Because it's easy to come here and we really don't say anything between 10:45 and 11:45. But to see what people are like beyond these doors the rest of the week is everything. That's what is really going to enable us to see the kind of faith that people have, to see the kind of Christians they are. And for for John, this was everything. It really built him up, knowing this kind of Christian that he was able to talk to with this. But he does mention his prosperity, his spiritual prosperity. And it got me thinking, how rich or poor would we be if our financial prosperity matched our spiritual? How wealthy would we be? John speaks of the love before the church. That's a love that can be seen. That is a love. First off, that love that he's talking about right here, when you look at it, is the agape love, and it's one of 4 different loves that we see in the Greek. But the agape love is the one that's spoken about the most, and it is an active love. It is a love that says, I love you, and I'm going to prove it. I'm going to show you that I love you. It's the kind of love that Jesus had when he went to the cross. Zach mentioned John 3:16 this morning. That's agape love right there. And John is acknowledging Gaius as having that very kind of love for the church. He has that agape love before the church. It's a love that can be seen. Folks, if I claim that I love people, I need to be showing it, don't I? Because it does no good if I'm not showing it, if it's not on display. That's why whenever, if you mistreat anyone, if you disrespect anyone, you have failed at this kind of love. And it's not where we ought to be spiritually. But he goes on in this letter in verse 3. He says, Beloved, while I was very diligent to write to you concerning our common salvation. Excuse me, I'm writing Jude. Jude's next door. So, for I rejoiced greatly when brethren came and testified of the truth that is in you, just as you walk in the truth. And I have no greater joy than to hear that my children walk in truth. And beloved, and John, it's interesting that he would express it in that way. That he calls them my children. It's the same sentiment that, remember, Paul had for Timothy. But John this time is doing it for Gaius. And he says, Beloved, you do faithfully whatever you do for the brethren and for strangers who have borne witness of your love before the church. And if you send them forward on their journey in a manner worthy of God, you do well, because they went forth for my name's sake, taking nothing from the Gentiles. And we therefore ought to receive such, that we may become fellow workers for the truth. John rejoiced because the brethren spoke of Gaius' faithfulness. Can people say that of you? It's really interesting when you start looking at the impact that you have in a congregation. We certainly get encouraged when people come up to us and say, thank you for the work that you're doing, or great job, or whatever. And it's not why we do it, but we're thankful for it. And sometimes we're flattered by it. But when people start to talk to other people behind your back And I'm not talking about gossip, the bad kind of talking behind your back. I'm not talking about backbiting when they get behind your back and they just start talking ill of you. When people start building you up, when they start talking about you in the best possible light because of your faith that they see, because of the things that you might be doing in the congregation, because of the way that you might be treating people, because of how spiritually mature you might be, just whatever it is, it doesn't matter. When people start talking like that to other people, and it gets back to you, that's when you know I'm doing what I want to be doing. I'm doing what I know has to be done. That's what John was doing with him. He's saying, I know that, the person you are, I know the Christian you are, not just because of what I've seen, but because of what other people have said. They saw it. They see how active you are. They see how faithful and righteous you are. They see your attitude. And they are just taken by it. They love it because it's the right attitude to have as a Christian. They attested how he walked in truth. And then John could take that and add his own testimony to it from what he saw. And he could know that everything that I saw is genuine. Everything that I saw was not just a front. But I know that other people were able to see it as well. How encouraging that can become to those who want to be living like Christ. This is, brethren, lifting someone up because of his integrity. And John had someone like that with him named Gaius. Unfortunately, there was someone else that he mentions with this. In verse 9, he says, I wrote to the church, but Diotrephes, who loves to have the preeminence among them, does not receive us. And therefore, if I come, I will call to mind his deeds, which he does, prating against us with malicious words. And not content with that, he himself does not receive the brethren, and forbids those who wish to, putting them out of the church, running them out, or trying to get them to leave. Folks, when you look at Gaius, we have a devoted heart. You look at Diotrephes, on the other hand, we have a disdaining heart. One that's completely opposite and counters that devoted heart. His attitude was of superiority and sowing discord in the congregation. You think about that. John talks about, when John comes in, here's an apostle, he's a spiritual leader, and here's Diotrephes that had wanted nothing to do with this spiritual leader. He would not respect the spiritual leader. He didn't comply with the spiritual leaders. They were beneath him. Folks, this kind of preeminence carries pride. That's what's connected directly to it. It's thinking my way is better than anyone. My way is better than them, or my ways are, where I'm at and what I believe, or what, things that may have been done are much better than what they could ever give you. They want control. That's what Diotrephes wanted. And they, make no mistake, they will backbite whoever is in their way. There's no room for that in the church. And instead of unity, they attempt to sway and recruit people to their side. That's what Diotrephes was doing. John assures that he would talk to him about his conduct. It's vital to face something like that and get it taken care of. Someone like Diotrephes hates it when people face them. I can't imagine just how Diotrephes must have hated when John actually got to that point and talked to him and said, what you're doing is not okay. I'm sure he loved him, but he didn't love what he was doing. He prated, John said. That word prated is a strong word. It means to chatter falsely. It doesn't, and not just that you're just saying things that are that aren't true. It's that you're chattering. And one of the words that when you look at the Greek of this is that you are just blabbering. That means that you just keep talking and you don't stop. You keep talking about someone else. You keep bringing stuff up that's not true about someone else. You keep running someone else down constantly. Every time you get a chance to talk to them, you run them down. That's what was happening with Diotrephes to John and his companions. Prated against John and his friends with malicious words. He rejected brotherly love. You didn't agree with him, you're the enemy. Simple as that. Someone with the heart of Diotrephes will always be exposed. I'm sure John didn't want to have to even do that. No one wants to have to do stuff like that. But he said, I'm going to talk to him when I see him. Folks, have nothing to do with that when someone starts that. You look at the very next verse, verse 11. John says, beloved, do not imitate. This is coming right on the heels of that Diotrephes, the attitude that he had. And then he tells them, beloved, do not imitate what is evil. Don't do what he's doing. But what is good? He who does good is of God. But he who does evil has not seen God. Folks, I can't act a certain way that's counter to what God purposes me, to what a Christ-like attitude is, and then expect for other people to see me as Christ-like. It doesn't work that way. He says, don't be like him. Do not imitate what is evil. But then we have a third person who's not like that at all. Someone with a dependable heart. In verse 12, he says, Demetrius has a good testimony from all and from the truth itself. And we know, and we also bear witness, and you know that our testimony is true. How amazing this is. And how interesting this is. He spends a lot of time with Gaius, doesn't he? In talking about who he is, we get to know what his character is like. Then we get to know who Diotrephes, what he's like. Demetrius, we don't have a lot of information about. But we do know that a lot of people notice him for what he's doing. He says he has a good testimony from all. That means everybody knows what gives him that good testimony. People take notice when we least expect it, don't they? That's why we need to be careful as Christians, because we are always on display. Everywhere we go, people, someone gets to know who you are. They're going to challenge it. But they're also going to notice the good that comes with it as well. Whether or not you are carrying yourself now the way that Christ expects you to do it. We have a brand new Christian who was in the auditorium this morning. And people are going to notice from here on out what kind of conduct he has. And they're going to judge and they're going to scrutinize and do all the things that come with being a Christian. But don't ever, ever compromise that. You're heaven bound when you're a Christian. You're heaven bound. They didn't go to the cross for you. These people who are challenging and who might question why you made the decision that you did, they wouldn't die for you. They can't get you to heaven. Don't worry about that. Worry about living the way that you need and the influence that you can have on other people. There's not a lot that we know about him, and yet the Holy Spirit thought that his conduct was worthy to be recognized, doesn't it? His life agreed with the gospel. His character was demonstrated by the truth that he believed. He had a good reputation among fellow Christians, faithful Christians. Not only that, but he was endorsed by John himself. Folks, this kind of righteous behavior glorifies God. We're not to do it for our own glory. That's not why we do it. It's not about me. The way that I live ought to glorify God, bring him the respect and the honor that he deserves. But I can only do it by living a certain way, can't I? That's the way that I'm going to be able to glorify him. This kind of righteous behavior glorifies him, and it can win over some who may have had a critical opinion of Bible believers. You are on display as a Christian, but what a wonderful thing it is to be in the kingdom of God. So how is your heart today? Does it require surgery? Is change needed with the way that you're living right now? Is your heart right with God? Folks, if not, I want to encourage you to come forward this morning. Not to put you on display, but that we can pray and encourage and support you in the changes that might be needed. I don't know everyone's spiritual state here this morning, but you know what your spiritual state is. And if you do not have your heart right with God right now, you can take care of it this morning. Please don't walk out of these doors without doing so. Let's pray. Let's get it taken care of. You have a chance right now. Together we stand and sing.